Okay. All right, so please open your poll app. We'll have some poll questions and current events, and then we'll discuss today's topic. Your diet projects are due, and the weekly journals will be due on Friday, next Monday. You are on your own for finishing up your presentations, which will be due Wednesday when we get to class. And just like with the diet, the nutrient sales pitches, I'm not sure how we're going to do it. So if anybody has any suggestions, if anybody really wants to go first, yay, we'll wing it. It seemed to work pretty well. You guys did a great job for the last assignment. So what I have on the slide today is a picture of a DEXA scan. This is a scan that it's one of the things that can be used to assess body fat, but it was for my first experience with it was for bone density. It's used, and this person has a scan of their hip. When folks have their bone density checked for osteoporosis, this is one of the places that is scanned. It's a non-invasive test. You're laying on a table and the scan just goes over you. You don't have to change. And what you can sort of see on the side of this slide here, because I wanted to make it pretty, I didn't realize it would cut this out, is that you're measured along three different measurements, which are and you have the green range, the yellow range. Basically, it's looking at the density compared to your demographic, well, my demographic and actually your demographic. And that's how we look at bone density. And if it's in the yellow range, that's a flag. In the green range, that's good. And that's something that we'll talk more about, and it's one of the discussion questions. Are you ready? Oops. Can't wait. Three, two, one. The body will maintain blood calcium levels at the expense of bone calcium. True or false? Five, four, three, two, one. All right, so this is true. Your blood calcium levels are probably one of the most tightly regulated minerals in your body, one of the most tightly regulated things in our body. And it has to do with the fact that while 99% of our calcium is found in the bone, that 1% that's found in the blood is responsible for functions that, well, it's used for nerve impulse transmission, heartbeat, and the body will sacrifice bone calcium in order to maintain blood calcium levels. So if your blood calcium levels are changing, there's something going on that should be looked at. And yeah, okay, let's see. Whoops. What am I doing here? And this is another slide or a picture that was in the video, basically kind of showing on the left, with adequate dietary intake, your blood calcium will be normal, your bone calcium will be good. However, if your diet's poor, your blood calcium still is normal because your bone is sacrificing calcium in order to maintain blood levels. The calcium storage bank is found in the trabecular bone, the blood, or the cortical bone. That calcium storage bank. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's talk. So the storage of calcium is found primarily in what's called the trabecular bone. And if we look at I guess it's like an x-ray of the bone, this is also the hip bone. The trabecular bone is this portion, the lacy structure is what the book refers to it. It's where the calcium, where the phosphorus, where a protein called hydroxyapatite is deposited. The cortical bone is the outer portion of the bone. It's that strong outer portion of the bone. But the calcium bank, if you will, is what's deposited in the trabecular bone. And if you have any questions, by all means, ask. Also, when we look at fractures, osteoporotic fractures, those are usually occurring in the trabecular bone. And this is a picture of x-rays with micro fractures that can occur throughout lifespan. And they heal if your bone is healthy, they heal. But what happens over time is that, well, over time it can reduce the strength of the bone and increase risk for fracture. Calcium supplements should be taken if you don't like milk. True or false? I'll give you a hint. This is a nutrition class. What's going on? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. No, there are plenty of sources of calcium that don't come from supplements. And if you're somebody who doesn't want to drink milk, the non-dairy alternatives many of them have calcium added to them, and there are vegetables and fruits. While they may not be as bioavailable, they are also sources. Calcium supplements should supplement your diet. They should not replace food sources of calcium. And there is some data suggesting that dietary calcium in greater than, and I'll throw the number at you, 2,500 milligrams a day over time can be risky. So that if you are taking calcium supplements, between the supplements and your dietary intake, it shouldn't go above 2,500 milligrams a day. And if you are taking calcium supplements, and this was in the video, there are different types of calcium supplements. There's calcium carbonate and calcium citrate. Those are the two main ones. Calcium carbonate is one that should be taken with food because that carbonate is absorbed better with acid. So that's why you should, with the acid from the stomach. So this is one of the reasons why these should be taken with food, whereas calcium citrate can be taken on an empty stomach. Oh, wait, I had something else here. Oh, these are some that you should avoid, the types of supplements you should avoid, because they've been shown to be contaminated. And as I've said before, supplements are not regulated by the government, so what's on the label isn't necessarily what's in the product. But when we're looking at big name companies that sell supplements, they have a huge reputation to uphold. So the chances are that if you're getting, I don't know, I can't think offhand of a brand of supplement, that they're probably, what's on the label is in the product. And we talk about this when we look at food, drugs, and supplements. But these at the bottom, they're not always what they say they are. And this has nothing to do with calcium, but these are some alternative beverages and along with cow's milk. And I just wanted to show this because, anecdote alert, I have a friend who was talking about how she drinks almond milk because she doesn't like cow's milk and it's a good source of calcium. And I said, well, it's not a good source of protein. Okay, so while people may use some of these alternative beverages in place of milk, they may have calcium in them, but some of them are really lousy for protein. So I think of all the plant beverages or alternative beverages, I don't know what they're called, instead of cow's milk in terms of protein content, soy is the one that's highest. Of course, there are plenty of other sources of protein for folks that don't eat animal products, but almond milk is not one of them. Loss of bone mass in women usually occurs around 50 years of age. True or false? Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so this is true. And I say usually because it has to do with the age at which women go through menopause. And that's an average number. It can occur plus or minus any number of years. But, and I talked about this in the video, the women peak bone mass is around this age. And what I talked about here was that you can increase your bone density, your bone mass up until about 25 to 30. Then there's a period of time where your bone mass stays steady, and then it starts to decrease regardless of what you're doing. It tends to decrease because estrogen is something that helps maintain bone mass. But as women go through menopause and lose that estrogen, they start to lose bone mineral density. It doesn't mean they're going to develop osteoporosis, and this is one of the discussion questions, so we'll talk more about this. But here again is a picture on the left of what healthy bones look like, and on the right what osteoporotic bones can look like. And you can see, if you look, that there's this like honeycomb lacy structure that sort of, I don't know about you, but I feel like I could grab it and crush it in my fingers. That didn't sound as like what I wanted it to sound like, but it's not, it doesn't seem strong. And what I want you to remember is that having osteoporosis doesn't mean your bones are going to break, all right? It's a risk factor for fracture, just like having high cholesterol is a risk factor for heart disease. That doesn't mean you're going to have a heart attack. It's a risk factor and something that you need to be aware of. So here's just a general question. Do you know anyone who's ever had a hip fracture? Wow. Nobody? Somebody. For those of you who are saying yes, who do you know that has had a fracture?
I have a friend that playing soccer, he fractured his hip.
Oh, that's interesting. How's he doing?
He's better. He had a long recuperation, but he's fine now.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I guess I was thinking that folks who do know people who fractured were going to say a grandparent, or because hip who has? Seems like grammar bad me. That the hip fracture is what most likely occurs in older folks. So was he playing sport when he hurt himself? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are different types of fractures. The least severe are wrist fractures. It may be an early warning sign of osteoporosis if it's something that occurs when you're doing something minor. Spinal fractures, and you can see from here when they're most likely to occur. But what I do want to say about what I have written here is just because you have chronic back pain doesn't mean you have osteoporosis. Just because you have a symptom doesn't mean you have a condition. But it is the osteoporosis of the spine that decreases the vertebrae, the density of the vertebrae, and leads to the hunching of people that makes them, as they lose height, that's something that the body that's how it starts to look, that the spine starts to curve as a result of losing bone density in the cervical vertebrae. But the hip is the most serious type of fracture in elderly. Having it at a younger age, I'm curious if it was an internal fracture or, was the trabecular bone or the cortical bone, but that's, not important. And an anecdote, my father, when he fell in his 70s and fractured his hip. And I remember the doctors telling us this statistic here about how 20% will die within 4 months. He lived another 15 years, but that was because we have healthcare. He had healthcare and a family that was very supportive, but it was very scary to hear these statistics, because what happens is that folks who are bedridden tend to get worse. Their health tends to decrease. And as it says here, 50% may go into long-term care. My father, after my mother had died and he was alone, could not take care of himself and ultimately did go into a long-term care facility. Iron deficiency anemia results in the decrease of carbon dioxide transport to the cells, nitrogen transport to the cells, potassium or oxygen transport to the cells. Iron deficiency anemia. Let's see this. Oh, that's not what's okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so the correct answer is oxygen. Right, there are different types of anemias based from different nutrients, but it's iron deficiency anemia. It's the iron that binds to oxygen as red blood cells go through the lungs. Okay, so you have iron is part of the molecule hemoglobin that's found in red blood cells. And as the blood goes through the lungs, you inhale oxygen, you do inhale nitrogen, but that's not what binds to the iron. Okay, so the iron picks up the oxygen and transports it to the cells, and that's what makes the cells survive. Folks who have iron deficiency anemia, these are some of the symptoms of iron deficiency anemia, because if the cells aren't getting oxygen, they get tired. Now, just because you may be tired or fatigued or have mental apathy or a headache doesn't mean you have iron deficiency anemia. Again, just because you have a symptom doesn't mean you have a condition. But this is a pretty easy, if you have healthcare, it's a pretty easy test to check for iron deficiency anemia. The easiest type of test is what's called a hematocrit. And what I used to actually do these, one of my first jobs was working for a WIC program, Women, Infant, and Children's Supplemental Feeding Program. And while I was primarily the dietitian, if somebody was absent, we kind of took over for each other. And part of the screening process would be to poke fingers, do a finger poke, and then you take the blood goes into a microcapillary tube, and then you spin it down in a centrifuge. So on the left, we have a tube of whole blood. I somehow don't think this is a microcapillary tube. And then it gets spun. And then what happens is the blood separates out with the packed red blood cells on the bottom and the plasma or serum on the top. And you measure the percentage. And that gives you an assessment of somebody's iron status. And because I don't do this anymore, I think that normal iron hematocrit for men is like 42% plus or minus 5, and women is, I don't know, lower, but cocktail chatter. But that's one test that can, if you have access to it, kind of easily assess your iron status. Heme iron comes primarily from animal sources, true or false? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Huh. My heart grew 3 sizes. Okay. So we have heme and non-heme iron that we consume in our diet. Non-heme iron comes from vegetable sources. Heme comes from hemoglobin, and it only comes from animal sources because we get hemoglobin from, well, it comes from blood, and we get blood from animal sources. That's one of the reasons why vegans may be at higher risk for iron deficiency anemia, is because they don't consume animal products, which has the most bioavailable form of iron. Okay, so while it may only account, I have on the right here, 10% of the average daily intake, it is much better absorbed. And I have down here that I want to talk to you about ferric and ferrous. I talked about it in the video, and it's one of the discussion questions, so I'm just going to pass on that for now. Okay, so current events. Oh, but before we have, so Alejandra, you went the other day, right?
Yeah, but today is my 3rd day.
Ah, okay, excellent. Let me just write this down and then get out of here so that I can see a little better. Whoops. Okay, oh, but before I do that, I made a note. I wanted to say something about calcium supplements. Does anybody know anyone who takes calcium supplements? You're taking calcium supplements, Justin, what for? Can I ask? I mean, you don't have to tell me. Tell me it's none of my business, that's fine.
No, so I don't take calcium supplements, but I do have a story. So once I was in CVS and I saw like a whole packet of like gummy calcium supplements, and I got it just because like they looked good, and I was like, okay, well, I'll just take extra calcium, even though I wasn't sure if it would do anything. But I ate the whole thing in 2 days, so I feel like that was just like a fun story with calcium supplements I had, and there were like 60 like giant gummies of calcium. But
Okay, so that might be funny, haha, but it's and I'm glad, that's a great story. I'm going to tell that one instead of the one I'm going to say. Calcium carbonate. So I told you 2 different types of calcium carbonate, calcium supplements, calcium carbonate and calcium citrate. And I told you the calcium carbonate needed to be taken with food. The thing I didn't tell you about calcium carbonate is that it can be extremely constipating. Not asking for any more information than you already gave us, Justin, but that's why I don't like these flavored candy supplements. I know the gummies have come out since. There's also there were these flavored supplements called Viactive. And I used to take the chocolate ones, but I have high standards for what chocolate's supposed to taste like, and these supplements did not meet them. So I switched to the caramel. I don't take them anymore, but I remember giving the ones that I didn't have, that I wasn't using, to somebody that I worked with. She's no longer there, at Babson. And she had them on her desk and she used to eat them like candy. And all I could think of was, do people think she's really grouchy because she's really constipated? You know, I mean, I don't know what your situation was, Justin, but I do get concerned that when you have these kinds of things sitting around and you give them to your children, someday that kids will find them and just eat them because they taste like candy. And that can make them very unwell. So that's my constipating calcium carbonate story. Thank you. Okay, Alejandra. What do you have for us?
So my news is very recent. It's from 2 days ago, from the American College of Cardiology. It is about that artificially sweetened drinks are not necessarily a healthier alternative to sugary drinks. So the way they prove it is that they made records of over 100,000 people, and they classified them between people that consume sugary drinks were all beverages that contain 5% or more sugar. People that only consume artificially sweetened beverage, which are also called for us non-energy beverage, and people that don't consume either of them. They made the records for 6 months, and then they will trace these people for a period of 10 years, from 2009 to 2019. And they realized over this period of 10 years, the people who consume both sugary drinks and artificial sweetened drinks had either a heart attack or stroke or any first incident cardiovascular disease, much more than the people that didn't consume any of those.
So what do you think about that?
I think that if you like, I don't know, Diet Coke, just drink it because you like it, not because you think it's a healthier alternative to regular Coke. I like it better because I think it's more sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I do count my calories, so I prefer it because of that. I'm aware it's not healthier, but yeah.
So what else what was their reasoning for thinking that people might have had an increase in heart attacks?
Because 2,000 participants had first incident cases of cardiovascular disease, and the people that non-consumers of neither had none. So it's like maybe it caused it, maybe it didn't, but at least it didn't prevent it.
So, yeah, so I guess I'm wondering what their reasoning is for thinking that it might. I mean, that's correlation doesn't prove causation, right? But what is the reason that they think? You know, is there a mechanism by which they think these sodas? How many sodas does it say? How many? Again, I don't expect you to go to the source document, and I'm not a big fan of soda, period. But like you're saying, you know, if you're just having a couple a day, it does concern me that they think that this might cause heart attack, because if you're drinking sugar sweetened beverages in place of it, then that's up to 750 extra calories a day, or however many calories are in however large your soda is. So that's why I'm just wondering what else they accounted for. Were they looking at the exercise habits? Were they looking at the dietary habits of the folks, you know, or were they only looking at soda?
It doesn't say.
Right.
I think they were just trying to prove a point that it's not a healthy substitute, so that I think it's a political thing, because it says that they wanted to raise taxes in companies that did this, the same way as they raise taxes for companies that produce sugary drinks.
Okay.
So like saying is like there is no right or wrong, like both are bad.
So who did the study? That probably should have been my first question. Yeah.
The American College of Cardiology.
Oh, okay. So it's a cardiologist. Okay. Okay. Well, I think, you know, you said something absolutely brilliant. If you should drink it because you like it. I know I've heard that somewhere before, but, you know, and also that you should not be drinking a lot, that it is, you know, be careful what you drink. But that, I guess that's what I'm curious about, is what is the mechanism by which they think it can cause heart attack? Okay, Sasha, what do you have?
Yeah, so I found this really interesting study done about Black coffee on glucose levels. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So the point, like the headline of the study, and I found this on Science Daily, is that you should drink coffee after breakfast, not before, for better metabolic control. And that hit me right in the heart, because I always do the opposite. I need my coffee first, and I think that many of us do the same thing. And so this was published October 2nd by the University of Bath, and it's basically just a new study that looked at the combined effects of disturbed sleep and caffeine on our metabolism, and it produced pretty surprising results. So basically what they found was that a strong cup of Black coffee to wake you up after a bad night's sleep could impair control of blood sugar levels. And they did this study on 29 healthy men and women, and that underwent 3 different overnight experiments in a random order. So they did test this on humans, and they took blood samples from the participants following like a glucose drink in which the calories might be typically consumed for breakfast. And the highlights of the study are that they found that one night of disrupted sleep did not worsen participants' blood glucose or insulin responses at breakfast when compared to a normal night's sleep. But in the past, like research suggested that losing many hours of sleep over one or multiple nights can have negative metabolic effects. So it's reassuring to learn that a single night of fragmented sleep does not have the same effect. And then at the same time, strong black coffee consumed before breakfast substantially increased the blood glucose level response to breakfast by about 50%. So that's super, super interesting. And this, I don't know, I just thought that this was something that I just did not imagine. It's like a really interesting little niche study I found. So I just wanted to share.
So what else? So what do you want to know before you, well, you're not going to stop drinking your black coffee in the morning. I don't drink black coffee. I like to put milk and Nestle's Quick in it, and I'm not going to stop doing that. But what else would you want to know before you worry about this black coffee increasing your risk for diabetes?
Yeah, I mean, I really want to see how it would differ if you put creamer or milk or something in the coffee, and how much would affect, like if you put a tablespoon of cream, like would that be the same effect on your blood glucose as like a half cup of milk? Like, I don't know. I think that there's so many different like follow-ups that you can do with this study, like, because they did black coffee, but having a negative effect on your glucose metabolism by around 50% is pretty substantial. So I want to see like what they do next with that.
So would you send me that? Because so what I was writing down that I was interested in was, first of all, 50% of what? So, you know, did it go from 120 to 125? Did it go from 70 to 75? I also wanted, so what they did was they did this study on healthy people. They didn't do this study on people who already had diabetes. So how long did it take for their blood sugars to come back down? And if we're talking, sorry, I'm a little, I'm wondering about this study, because if instead of having black coffee for breakfast, you decide to have a granola bar that has 20 grams of sugar in it, is that going to make your blood sugars go up just as fast? And the other thing is, okay, so your blood sugars go up, but how long did it take for them to come back down? One of the things that we ask diabetic patients to do, not healthy folks, but diabetic patients, is to check their blood sugars 2 hours after they've eaten to see how that food has affected their blood sugars. So did they do follow-up checks? Because having your blood sugars go up is one thing, but how long did it take for blood sugars to come down? So that's what I would like to know about their population, because these are folks who have normal blood sugars, normal insulin response. And if their insulin is responding in a healthy manner, then the blood sugars came down. So for example, something that I'm thinking about, you know, like people worry, what am I trying to say? We talk about high blood pressure. Everybody's blood pressure will go up under certain circumstances. You know, sitting in front of a computer and finding out that none of my slides are working or that I made a terrible mistake, my blood pressure will go up. Exercising will make your blood pressure go up. That's normal. It's how long does it take your blood pressure to come down? That's a measure of heart health. So it's one thing for blood sugars to go up, but how long did it take them to come down? And that's a measure of their insulin response. So, and I don't, that's why I'm asking you to send me the study, because of course, what you read is what's exciting and loud and noisy, but it may be that within that information, there are references to the other information. And I want to look, because I'm not telling you to put Nestle's Quick in your coffee either, because that's all sugar, right? So, and I don't want you to start putting creamer in your coffee because you like black coffee. So I have a feeling that over time it's a wash, but I would like to have a look at it if you don't mind sending it to me.
Yep, I already sent it to you.
Well, there you go. Now I just have to remember to look at it. Okay, great. Yael, what do you have for us?
So my study is on like the effects of nutritional supplements and COVID, because I know a lot of people have been saying like take supplements now, like it's gonna make it better for COVID. But this study, it's not a study, it's an article from Harvard from their public health school. And basically what it's saying is that it's not necessarily a link between like certain vitamins and minerals and COVID. It's just the nutritious diet that makes you better like equipped for like your immunity and to deal with COVID. So they're not really recommending you take, like I know a lot of people are talking about zinc, vitamin C, and vitamin D. And basically what the article concludes is that, yeah, having the adequate amount is good because it's good to make you healthy, but it's not necessarily directly correlated with better results for COVID-19. And then it also says like if you're not getting enough in your diet, take supplements, because for example, a lot of people like get their vitamin D, for example, from the sun, and since everyone's inside, like it is possible that you're not getting enough because of quarantine. So like in that case, like maybe you should consider a supplement, but otherwise like just try to get it regularly in your diet and you should be fine. Like it's not like you need excess to deal with COVID-19.
Right. Okay. So what I'm thinking about that, and of course, because we recommend food and being outside, and some people can't, and you're absolutely right. Especially if you live above the 40th parallel, like we do in New England, our chances of getting adequate sun over the next couple months are, what do they say? 3, slim, fat, and none. However, what I'm wondering is that folks that are able to get food through their diet, is that a marker for a lifestyle of someone who has insurance, who has time to be buying the food that improves their nutritional status, so that to begin with, they are at better risk of handling COVID?
Yeah, so that's what that's what this is talking about. Like it's saying that when you want to deal with COVID, like from a government perspective, like you can't just say like wash your hands and stay inside, because some people don't have the adequate means of being like just healthy, like as a baseline. So like for a healthy individual, yeah, you can take those steps to not get COVID. But for people that are, like you said, like that can't get adequate sources of like vitamins and minerals in their diet, like then they should consider paying that extra for supplements, because that'll bring you to like the baseline. But if you can get it regularly, like it's not worth it to add supplements into your diet.
So this is interesting to me because it also is a bigger picture. I mean, if we're looking at people who can't afford those foods to get supplements, what else can't they afford? Can they afford insurance? Can they afford, to live in an area where the air is cleaner, or where it's safe for them to go out and walk? So food is one part of the picture. That's why I say, is it a marker for a lifestyle that puts them at risk for having a more difficult time dealing with COVID?
Yeah.
And so, yes, taking supplements is one thing, but when you're looking at that one thing compared to all the other inequities in the life, is it really improving? But Harvard Health, this is, that's their newsletter, but so, okay. It took me a long time to start looking at these kinds of studies as not do this and then this will happen, but to realize these are markers for a lifestyle, or markers, people, I get asked questions about, is it better to eat clean? No, it's not. Clean eating is a bourgeois lifestyle of people who can afford to do it. Eat those foods because you like them, not because you think they're healthier, but there are people whose life doesn't lend itself towards having the ability to do that kind of thing. People who, well, anyway, I'm just ranting now. Thank you for coming to my TED rant. Let's see, let me see any other comments, any questions? These are very good, thank you. Okay, let's see, what do I have next? All right, so let's see. Tyra, you said when you were younger, you were prescribed vitamin D because your calcium levels were low, and therefore they were, vitamin D helps the body absorb calcium. Is that relationship true? Yeah. I found it weird when I was lacking vitamin D. Oh, okay. So what's your question, Tyra?
So would you not recommend vitamin D supplements? You would still recommend getting that from food sources?
So vitamin D does help the body absorb calcium more efficiently, but whether or not, so that your dietary calcium levels were low. Is that what you're telling me from this?
I think so. I think they were saying that like my body wasn't absorbing it, even though I was like getting milk, or I was like drinking milk and eating butter.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how they were assessing that your calcium levels were low based on what we just talked about in class, because calcium is really tightly regulated. And I don't think that unless you had other issues going on, they were not assessing your calcium from blood. So how are you doing now?
I don't know. I don't take them anymore.
And you're still with us, so I think you're all right. Yeah, so yes, it's true. Vitamin D helps the body absorb calcium more efficiently. So does lactose. So does a diet that, has these other foods in it. But whether it was going to increase your calcium absorption because your blood levels were low, no, that's not. As an athlete, I read articles and heard professional athletes say daily electrolytes can be extremely beneficial for performance and recovery. Is this a myth or true? If you've been exercising and you're sweating a lot and you're losing a lot of electrolytes, then replacing them is beneficial. One of the things that training does for athletes, in addition to when we talked about how it preserves the glycogen stores and you turn to fat more quickly, thus conserving glycogen stores, is that you also preserve the electrolytes. You don't lose them as quickly, and that's one of the benefits of training. But daily electrolytes, in addition to normal diet. Scarlett, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, it's just I know like a few people who went to the doctor if they like suffered from like kind of sudden weight gain, and a lot of them came back with like thyroid medication. I don't know any more specifics than that, but I know like they've been on the medication for a while and like they haven't seen a change. So I was just wondering if like.
Oh, okay. We're looking at this other question then. We're not looking at the electrolyte question. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Get with me.
Sorry, I didn't realize I posted too.
I know. I didn't realize I posted too because I covered up the first part of your name here.
Sorry. Yeah, I just have never been someone to take electrolytes.
Don't.
But yeah, I was just wondering if it.
No, as the sports dietitian Nancy Clark says, chocolate milk and French fries. That's what you should use for recovery. So then your question about thyroid and weight gain, it's true. A underactive thyroid is related to weight gain. It sounds like the folks that if they have thyroid issues, then their medication might not be correct yet. And that can be very unfortunate and disrupting. Juliana, does working out during a fast have an effect on your metabolism for the rest of the day? What do you think?
I don't know, because one time I took an Orange Theory fitness class, and the whole
theory?
What?
A what theory?
Orange Theory. It's just what the fitness class is called. And they said,
sorry.
They said essentially if you get your heart rate to a certain zone at the beginning of the day, it can increase your metabolism for the rest of the day. I don't really know if there's any scientific evidence of that or if that's just marketing, but I'm not sure. I've heard this from multiple sources though.
Which doesn't mean anything anymore. Multiple sources means nothing, unless I'm one of them. No, kidding. I would say exactly what you said. What is the science behind it?
Okay.
And when you find the science behind it, let me know and we can evaluate it in class or we can evaluate it outside of class. Your call. Yes.
So I take Orange Theory classes, and I was speaking to someone about this, like their kind of marketing, and like the guy that I was speaking to, who's been like a weightlifter for a while, and he was talking to me and he was saying how it's like, oh my gosh, I've heard like it's I guess like a study that was done, and they put athletes under like they were like running on treadmills, but their like heart rates, like they were like, why aren't you trying hard enough? And then like it was like some sort of study where it showed like when your heart rate is in that orange zone for like it's 12 minutes or more. That's why the goal is to have your heart rate in the orange zone for 12 minutes at Orange Theory. So when your heart rate is in in that zone, then your like metabolism will be like in the next 23 hours will be increased. And that's exactly, and then one of my friends at Orange Theory who does it with me, he has a personal trainer. He went to the personal trainer and she said, yeah, that's actually true. Like that was based on a study. And so Orange Theory was created basically off of this one study. And I'm not sure, I mean, I could try to find it and send it to you.
Yeah. Well, and it's one study and it's somebody who's trying to market his theory.
Yeah, I think it was like multiple studies, but like that's where it started.
Okay, and it may be true. My question is, so what?
Mhm.
What does that mean?
Yeah, but I don't think that they say working out during a fast have an effect on your metabolism. They just say like just working out and having kind of exerting like that much effort in those 12 minutes. But I don't think a fast has to do with their like theory.
Okay, again, you know, increasing your metabolism for the rest of the day. I'm just looking at the time and I want us to get to the discussion questions, but these are also really, really important for you. My question, what does that mean to you? Do you feel like if you don't have your metabolism up for the whole day, are you failing? Why do you feel the need to have your metabolism up? What percentage increase is it? To what end do you want to have your metabolism up all day? Is it so that you can improve your heart rate and increase, you know, and strengthen your heart, or is it so you can eat more? You know, so what are the reasons that you want to have your metabolism up? But I don't know. I'd never heard of it. But yeah, if you want to send it to me, I would be interesting. But again, it sounds like a marketing thing. But prove me wrong, and that's fine. Yeah. And then last but not least, Kat, does sleep affect athletic performance? I would imagine it does. I don't think getting 8 versus 5 makes a difference. No. Everybody's sleep needs are different. I talk about this in my health and disease class. There's nothing magic about 8 hours of sleep. It's like saying you need 8 glasses of water a day. There's no science to prove it. So whatever works for you, if you find that you have a good performance on 5 hours, then good on you. So does that help? Does that answer your question, Kat?
Yeah, it was mainly just about that 8-hour mark that
Yeah.
everybody talks about.
Right. Yeah, there's nothing magic about 8 hours. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to divide you into 5 groups and go through these questions. What is it? What time is it? All right, so it's 5 of 11. So I'll give you about 10 minutes or 15 minutes. I'll come in and check, and then we'll come back together and remind me to put my clock back, my recording back on. Any questions before you go into the breakout rooms? All right.